blue gray.
Yeah, look at us. A little matchy matchy, as Charlie and I would say.
How is Miss Charlie?
Charlie is good. Miss Charlie is good. Started school. She's a big girl now. So it's exciting. Yeah.
For those who don't know, Charlie is basically like your adopted daughter.
My niece, yeah. Adopted daughter, niece. She's my extra
Yeah,
kid. She's
yeah.
my extra. She's my extra kid. And yeah, she's good. We were over there the other day, and we were playing. She crashed after school. She's still at the gets home from school and is exhausted stage. So she crashed, and then we had to play full force. Then we were playing tag around the house, and I was like, "Oh, I'm too old for tag." But my son was with me, and so they started playing hide and seek. Except she only likes to seek. She, she so so my son just kept getting told to hide. No, you go hide now. You go hide now. So it was more seek and seek.
Great segue in what we're talking about today. And what we're talking about today is why we have conflict. And the reason this is a good segue is because had you challenged Miss Charlie, well, no, you have to hide now,
Oh
it could
dear.
have caused a conflict.
Oh, it would have. It would have. It wouldn't, could have. It would have.
Right? So our topic today is the real reason we have conflict. And is it because we want our own way? Is it because we don't know how to perspective take? Is it because whatever the reason? And then do we manipulate to try and get it?
More influence.
Influence.
Influence
I actually don't think, well,
manipulation.
manipulation gets a bad rap
Yes.
because we manipulate all the things to fit all the time to fit things into what we need, right? It's just
Yeah.
when we start to manipulate people when it becomes a negative, apparently.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, we manipulate lots of things. Um, it all goes back to the emotions we have connected to words, Jen. Emotion, even
Yeah.
conflict, right? I think people would put a negative connotation to conflict, where I think you and I would challenge and say conflict is good.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. I think maybe some of it is age and maturity and
Mhm.
wisdom, right? That you need to have conflict in order to get through things. Like when I see couples in my practice and they said, we for the first 3, 4 years of our relationship, we never fought at all. I'm like, so somebody was not happy. So
Yes.
somebody was being silent, right? Because you can't put two people together and not have some sort of conflict. And that doesn't
Hmm.
mean it has to be a ball out fight, right? It just means that there's difference of opinion in figuring that out.
Yeah. And I think, to me, it's boundaries and expectations and creating boundaries and expectations. And I think conflict shows up a lot in sort of that space of creating boundaries and expectations because boundaries exist because my boundaries and your boundaries are logically different. So we will have conflict around those.
Mhm. Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know. I think and we talk about it a lot, right? About the fact that words emotion gets put onto words. And when that emotion gets put onto words, it really impacts how we perceive them. And so if I've grown up in a world where I think I have a better relationship with the word conflict now than I used to, as somebody who grew up in an abusive household, right? Like conflict to me was scary. Conflict equaled yelling. Conflict equaled people getting hurt. Conflict equaled bad things. And,
Mhm.
and that was my childhood experience with conflict. Conflict equaled bad, right? However, as I as I grew and as I studied and as I learned, right? Like I changed my relationship with the word conflict. And now I'm like, oh gosh, if there's not conflict, how do we move forward? If there's not conflict, how do we actually, like, how do we make a difference? Like conflict is where difference happens. Uh, if we all just
Where
agree,
iron sharpens iron.
yeah,
Yeah. Mhm.
100%. So like if we all just agree it's just going to stay the same, well, that's not good. So it's like I have a very different relationship with the word now than I used to have. And so I think we talk about that a lot because I think a lot of people have a have a negative feeling towards the word conflict. They don't have a healthy relationship with the word.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And it would be interesting to what is the word or the words that people are okay with when it
Mhm.
comes to conflict? Healthy disagreement. Um, I don't know. I don't know
Yeah.
what's
So if a couple comes into your practice and they haven't had conflict and you're like, and I don't know if there's an answer to this, but I'm going to assume there probably is something. Like how do you help people start to understand conflict? Like where does that sort of conversation begin? Is there like, do you define conflict in a certain way with somebody or?
definitely, definitely. Like I will ask questions, right? So I get very curious. So in a session, I will ask questions about when you disagree, what happens, right? And if they say, "Oh, we never disagree," it's like, okay, well, when your parents used to disagree, what happened? Well, we never
Mhm.
saw my parents argue. I'm like, oh, okay. So it gives me
Mm,
information that you don't know how to have conflict, and so
yes.
there's probably an avoidance of it, right? Because conflict does not mean, again, like people have to be angry. It doesn't mean that. It just means that there's a difference of opinion and you're trying to sort it out. That's all it really is.
Yeah. So I had might have been in couples therapy. I don't know. I had a therapist once say, and it stuck with me as something really powerful, that like if we think about times of stress, that in times of stress, we're essentially our natural instinct and our natural body's response to stress is to try and preserve itself, to try and save itself, and that's a very natural response to stress. So in times of stress, we tend to become selfish, and we become selfish because we're trying to self-preserve.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so we naturally try and fight for what we need
Mhm.
in those times. And so I always kind of that for me has always since I heard that for me has really stuck with me as something I almost check myself on. Like if I'm in conflict with somebody, is there some kind of preservation words today? That I'm trying for, or if I'm mediating a conflict, is there some kind of self preservation? Why can't I say that word today? That they're fighting for. Like, what are your thoughts around sort of that idea and its connection to conflict?
Well, so you got me into the brain science.
I know.
The brain science. When our amygdala goes off, right? When that smoke alarm goes off in our brains, it it immediately it's fight or flight. What am I going to do? How am I going to be okay again? Right?
Mhm.
And during those times, rational thought is you can't have it. And so
Yeah.
you have to bring yourself down. So to what you're saying, that self-preservation, how let me breathe. Let me calm my
Mm,
body down. Let me get to a place where I can regulate and then have the conversation, right? Like when someone says, I can't have this conversation right now, I need a minute, we need to listen to that because there's some people where, no, we need to talk right now. It has to be right now. And what they're not understanding is that the other person who can't have the conversation right now, they literally cannot have the conversation because they're not in a place where their rational brain is online. It's offline and they need a minute,
yeah.
right? And so with couples, it's like you have to deal with your own anxiety with not having being able to deal with this right now because the other person cannot a productive conversation will not happen.
So as an extrovert, likes to deal with things right away. Like how speaking for the extroverts of the world, who is like, can we just talk about this? So speaking for the extroverts of the world, but no, as an extrovert, because this was 100% a challenge in my marriage, in my marriage that's now ended. This was 100% a challenge because he was an introvert. But he was an introvert. And so that was literally the challenge for us was he needed time to think and I needed to talk about it. I felt like though he weaponized that time to think because we would be 3, 4, 5 days later and still not able to talk about it. And for the extrovert in me, I was going crazy. Like I was like, okay, and
Yeah.
and not gonna lie, we had therapists who were like, well, you just need to settle. And I was like, no. Like at what point does somebody need
There has to be a
to know?
balance there,
Yeah.
right? There's got to be a balance there because just as you're the extrovert, you're feeling anxious and frustration. The other person, I mean, they're going to have to deal with their anxiety and frustration too, and meeting the. So it might not be right away, but it
Mhm.
might be an hour, it might be a day, but there has to be an agreement between the two parties of how long are we going to process
Yeah.
before we deal with the situation.
So if we think about conflict, because this is sort of a big space that we spend time with companies, right? So where we're trying to trying to help people navigate conflict. So when we think about conflict, where I automatically go is trust, right?
Mm.
And the fact that if I trust you, I'm probably more willing to have a healthy conflict, for lack of a better way of putting it, than if I don't. Is there brain science behind that? Like, is it a safety thing at that point that I don't feel as much need for self-preservation? Hey, there's the word. It worked.
Well, there probably is, but I don't know what the exact brain science
Okay.
would be. What I would say is that trust, because it's, as you said, word association, because it's a positive, and
Mhm.
because let's use us. I trust you. If you say something or do something, in my mind, I'm not immediately going, she's trying to hurt me, right?
Yes.
My amygdala is not going off because I trust you. It's like, that was weird. Let me find out what that's all about,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Right. That's more likely going to happen. Now, if I'm in a place in my life where I'm stressed, I'm tired, I'm hungry, or whatever the case might be, and you do or say something, there might be something in my head that goes up, well, that kind of sucked,
Hmm.
right? And then that murmuring and all of that stuff can happen. But at the end of the day, likely that because there's the relationship and there's the trust, I'm not going to go off. And depending on how I dealt with stuff in the past, right? My
Hmm.
experiences of dealing with conflict in the past with people I trusted, that's also going to influence how I'm going to come at the conflict too. So there's
Yeah.
so many things that come into
Well, and
play.
it's interesting, right? Because anytime somebody, like, I always talk about like conflict, communication, all of those things, and I say like it's hard because if it wasn't hard, there wouldn't be millions of books on it, and we'd have solved it by now. It's hard
Right.
because of humans. Like our brains are complex and everything else. So I think if we go into sort of that manipulation side of things, right? Like I where my brain automatically goes is manipulation equals negative, influence equals positive. And so I studied from a group called Vital Smarts. And so I think they've renamed now. Vital Smarts has a book called Influencer. And the whole concept behind it is that you can get people to do things that you want them to do 10 times better if you follow sort of this method. And but what's interesting in the method, and the funny thing is that they actually use the same sort of matrix in their book on accountability, and they use it in a different way. So in accountability, it's ultimately how others are influencing or how other outside circumstances are influencing the person, and that's why they might not do what they say they're going to do. or they might not do it as often or whatever that is. And those same influences are how you can get people to do what you need them to do. So it's a six box matrix. On one side is self, on the other side is structure. Nope. The other side is others, and then it's nope. It's influence. It's knowledge and influence essentially are the two, and then self, social, and structure are the three down. And so it's like self. It's like I have the knowledge. I I want to do it, right? Other people have like are backing me up. So we used to talk about like positive peer pressure, right? Versus I have a spouse at home who's saying, why are you working long hours? But I have a boss at work saying, why aren't you here long enough? And so now I've got that social sort of pull as to which one am I going to listen to. Probably going to listen to my partner, right? And so and then structural is just that, like are the systems around me set up to help me win? But on the influence side of things, the story that always stuck in my mind from the book from Influencer was there was a village in somewhere in Africa that this particular village was having significantly better results with a parasite that would kill you if you got this parasite. And so they went to try and figure out why was this village so much more successful with avoiding this parasite than all the other villages around. And what they learned was that the women would pour the water through their dresses before putting it into the basins, ultimately acting as a filter. And so it was all about now, how do we get the other villages to do this? Because if we just tell them to, that wasn't enough. And so the whole idea is that, if you can use social influence to show, look at what's happening here, if you can use self, like help them understand why do I want to do this? Well, it's going to keep your children alive. Okay, big self influence. Right. And structural influence, how do we make this easier for them? And so by sort of manipulating those systems was how you could actually get people to do what you wanted them to do. And so that was sort of the whole concept of influence and these 6 sources of influence. And so like that to me, ultimately manipulation, but manipulation for good.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. If we if we if we go back to why conflict occurs, or maybe we need to define the type of conflict we're talking about. When
Mm,
unhealthy type of conflict happens,
yes.
right? When an unhealthy type of conflict happens, oftentimes it's when two people are not trying to understand, but are trying to win,
Yes.
right? So they're not trying to understand the other perspective, they're just trying to win.
Yeah.
And when that happens, then it's like there's this wall here, and you're trying to talk, and you can't because there's this barrier. And that
Yeah.
barrier is the need to win, right? Which then people manipulate and gaslight and all of those things in that negative, unhealthy type of conflict.
Yeah. Well, and it's win, it's be right, it's all of those things. And I talk about it all the time because it's like my absolute favorite model, for lack of a better way of putting it, is the one from 15 Commitments of Conscious Leadership, and it's the above the line, below the line model, right? And so what they teach in conscious leadership is the whole idea that um, it's not actually about one being right. It's just about being aware of where you are. Are you conscious of what you're doing in this state? And so when you're above the line, you're open, you're curious, and you're trying to learn. And when you're below the line, you're closed, defensive, and trying to be right. And so the question to ask yourself when you're in a conflict is, am I operating above the line right now, or am I operating below the line? And reality is it's curiosity versus not curiosity.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And and I'm thinking when people are heightened, when they're upset, right? Logic isn't there. Like they're not willing to listen, to learn, to be curious, or any because they just angry. Right? And so in those type of situations, there has to be a certain level of self-awareness and self-management to be able to move to a healthier place when you're in conflict. Right. And so it all boils back down to emotional intelligence.
Yeah. Well, yeah. As it
Bec-
always does. It's amazing how that happens.
Yeah, because it's the regulation of yourself, right? In
Mhm.
those heightened times, in those heightened stress times, can you regulate yourself enough to come back down so you can have a healthy communication with somebody else?
Yeah, and I think, right, if we think about emotional intelligence, I think too often people look at it as, it's are you emotional or are you not? And that's how they define emotional intelligence versus like really truly understanding it's how we use our emotions to navigate life or how our emotions impact us as we navigate life. And recognizing your history, your story, all your intersectionalities that come into play in that survival mode. So as I'm in conflict and I am trying my amygdala, is that what's going off? Brain science, Jen. Um, and my amygdala is saying, danger, 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 right? That what do our emotions do in danger situations? And some people's emotions are going to make them go silent. Other people's emotions are going to make them go loud and out there, right? Violent. And so what is happening there and how do I pull myself back? And when I first learned emotional intelligence 20 plus years ago, the coach who first coached me through my very first assessment said to me, you know, if you are somebody who is higher on the scale of EQ, because in times of stress, we never perform at our best. In times of stress, we always perform a little bit worse. And so he kind of said, if you are somebody who uses your emotional intelligence more frequently in times of stress, you'll use it less, but you're probably still doing okay. But if you're somebody who's, okay on the average day in times of stress, you're probably not going to be very good. And if you're somebody who isn't super aware and all of those things in times of stress, you're probably demolishing people around you. Like or really pulling back, whichever way that could go. And I know that's something that always sticks with me is it's like we tend to not be at our best in times of stress. And so emotional intelligence plays into that and that self-regulation. If I always struggle with self-regulation, I'm really going to struggle with it in a high stress time.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because during high stress time, that's when their basic instinctual gut reactions come out. We're not able to sit and think about it. It just can come out.
Yeah. Yeah. We
Unless we
don't,
can
yeah.
regulate.
It's just natural. It just happens.
Mhm. So what are we leaving people with? What are our thoughts with regards to, or what's the question that we are going to
Hmm.
leave people with today?
Oh, it's interesting. It could go a few different ways. Because I'm kind of leaning towards like, part of me wants to ask the question around the emotions that we have towards words and like because I think that even leads to conflict.
Well, definitely. If you interpret certain words a certain way and somebody is using those words, then that's going to lead you down a certain path, right? So yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
How do we turn that into a question?
Well, I would be curious to know
Okay.
what are people's thoughts about conflict, period.
Okay.
Do you think it's healthy? Do you think it's
Um,
unhealthy? What does it produce within you when a conflict arises? And there's no right or wrong. It just is what it is. It really is. It just is what it is. So let's have the conversation.
100%. Good question / action, Jen.
And then when we have the conversation, then we can come and support you.
Exactly.
If needed, if it's needed.
Awesome.
If it's needed. Okay, great. Well, nice seeing you again.
Bye, everybody. We'll be back.